Today's guest wants to remind you that care tasks and motherhood are not the same, and that care tasks are actually morally neutral. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Let's keep calm and mother on. Mothering is way too important to do alone, and way too serious to be serious all the time. My name is Christy Thomas, and I am here shoulder to shoulder with you, mothering and enjoying life together. This is the podcast where you can focus on being mindful and taking a deep breath with me and learning new things so you can pause and savor the amazing life you already have. Welcome, Casey Davis, to Keep Calm and Mother On. I am so excited to have you here today. You're like TikTok star by all accounts. Like even my kids know who you are. So I'm so glad you're here. You up my street cred with my teenagers.
That's awesome.
So Casey, let's learn a little bit about you in case other moms aren't on TikTok, because it's not a platform that everyone is on. Well, a lot of people are, but not everyone.
Yeah. So my TikTok handle is Domestic Blisters. And I've had that name honestly in my head for a while, and it's sort of a play on domestic bliss. So I started the channel. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a 2-year-old. And when I say a 2-year-old, I mean like a 23-month-old, like literally turned 2 3 weeks after my second baby was born. And so I have this 2-year-old. I have this little newborn baby. My husband is a new lawyer who's working a lot, and we just moved into a city where we didn't have any family around. And, you know, I'm a therapist by trade, and I experienced some postpartum anxiety with my first daughter. Mm-hmm. And so coming into my second, pregnancy and birth, I was like, okay, I'm going to lay out a support plan for myself. I started a mom's group. I had family that was going to roll in every few weeks. I put my 2-year-old into a part-time daycare. And then the pandemic happened.
Ooh.
And everything got shut down. Everything got grounded. And suddenly it was me and my 2 kids inside my house, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I developed some really serious postpartum depression. And my sister told me to get on TikTok one day, and I did. And I was just sort of futzing around. I posted a few videos, and I ended up posting a video of me cleaning my house one day. And I talked about this kind of funny way that I clean my house, where I think about all of the things in my house, and I think there's only ever just 5 things in a room. There's trash, dishes, laundry, things that have a place, and things that don't have a place. And I just sort of go down that category, and it helps me move really fast. Mm-hmm. And what I didn't expect was for so many people to reach out and say, this is the first piece of cleaning advice that's ever helped me.
Yeah.
And I realized that there was really this, it's not that there's a lack of home care mm-hmm. advice out there, but it's all very aspirational. It's all very Martha
Yes,
Stewart.
it is.
It's all very influencer.
Very Pinteresty, way to perfection, nothing practical.
Yes, and if you're just a normal person that with kids or with mental health or living through a pandemic, or, if you have any kind of barriers in your life, there's nobody really talking about, how do you keep house when you're drowning?
Yep. And that drowning is often silent, right? I love that you use that analogy of drowning, because as someone who's saw my kids go under once and have to pick them up, it's a really fast, quiet thing that happens in your life. So I love that analogy, because it's like you're above water and then you're not, and it happens mm-hmm. fast.
And it's written for all types of people, men, women, non-binary, mm-hmm. all types of families, single moms, parents. But I do find that when we talk about that silent drowning, there's something about that really resonates with moms.
Yep.
Because we can be doing all of the things that we need to do. We're kind of holding it together. People, the family's taken care of, but nobody seems to notice that we feel like we're drowning.
Yeah. And is that because we've confused what motherhood is?
I think so. I think that, when you look at sort of the mommy shaming mm-hmm. that goes on,
it's the big one right now.
Yeah. And it's often really related to how sacrificial a mom is being. Mm-hmm. So, homemaking your own organic puree that you picked out of the garden, like that is just like, wow, what a good mom. Whereas, buying Uncrustables is like, wow, how lazy.
Yes. Yeah. If your kid is wearing wrinkled clothes versus like the perfection of all of them wearing matching gymboree or whatever.
Right. And if you talk about difficulties with motherhood, you oftentimes will get really cruel pushback about, well, then why did you have kids? Then you shouldn't have had them. You should be able to give up your own. And it's just this narrative of sacrifice. Like,
yes.
It doesn't
You are
matter
no longer a person because you are a mother.
Because the reality is like, if you love having a home garden and home mashing your kids' baby puree, like that's fine if that's like your hobby and you have the capacity to do that. Mm-hmm. But but if that's like prescriptive for everyone, well then like that's a lot of time and energy. And so if I'm someone that has anything else going in my life, right? If I have a child that needs to go to special needs therapies, if I have a job, my own mental health, if I want to go to therapy, if I want to have a hobby for God's sake.
Or your extended family if something's going on beyond you.
If for some reason you don't have the room in your life to do that whole process, the message that we get is, well, then you shouldn't be like, that should be prioritized over anything that's just about you. Mm-hmm. You should always prioritize the ways in which you serve others before anything having to do with your own happiness, comfort, anything like that. And so it's just the sacrificial narrative. So we praise people.
We do.
When we see them like that. And so we really do sort of equate, giving up on ourselves and sacrificing ourselves as what a good mom is.
Yes. And that carries over, right? That the good mom isn't necessarily about strong relationships with your kids. It's about how it looks to everybody else.
Right. And what's wild to me is thinking about, we put mothers in this bind, this catch-22, where I'm supposed to be teaching my girls to have boundaries and to say no and to like be all these things, but I'm not allowed to be that thing.
Correct.
And my experience in raising daughters, and this is, I'm sure, true of all kids, but like the things that I've tried to teach my kids that are important, what you try to tell them is nothing compared to what they see you doing.
Yes. And as a mom with teenagers, I will tell you, they are much quicker to point out that hypocriticalness of like, wait a second, are you sure? Because I don't ever see you do that.
Like my kids have really good sense of boundaries when it comes to like asking to take a break, not letting people touch their bodies when they don't want to. And all these things that like now that they're kind of getting to the age where they're starting to vocalize, and I'm like, wow, what a cool thing. And what's kind of funny is like they got that from watching me, but I didn't model that always out of a sense of like, this will be good for them. Sometimes I modeled it out of my own stress and brokenness and all my, like, I feel so guilty about the times when I would get overwhelmed by being out-touched and would scream.
Yeah.
Get away. Do not touch my body.
Right.
Do not touch my body. And although, yes, I wish I would have handled that differently. What's kind of funny is that like what my kids took from that is like not letting people touch your body when you don't want to be touched is okay.
And it's a big deal. You have serious autonomy over your body and your space.
I've had my 4-year-old all of a sudden stand up and say, I need to go take a break when she's frustrated with her sister. And she never would have done that had she not seen me stand up in the middle of playing with them and go, I'm overwhelmed. I need to take a break.
Yep.
And so it's funny, like I'm expected to teach my kids all of these life skills, but I'm expected to not do them. But yet that's the best way to teach them.
Absolutely.
Like I say no to my kids when they say, do you want to play? No, I don't. I love you, but no, I don't want to play.
Not now.
not now.
Not this game, not this type of play. Yeah. All of those things. Moms are allowed to have things that feel good to them just because they feel good. Just like you posted, I think, yesterday about buying flowers just because.
Yeah. Man, it's like, how are we going to teach our kids to be not under this pressure of having to be perfect or always having to serve other people first if they're not seeing their mom be that way?
Yeah. It's a big deal. I pause when we go on family walks. I pause so often, like every 5 steps to take a picture of something marvelous to me. And I just hope that my kids pick up that wonder of life, right? Like that you're allowed to still be a full human. You're supposed to be a full human, even when you're a parent. So, and
they tend to latch onto those things that you do authentically.
Yeah.
Like if I, had a plan to stop and take a picture so that my kids would whatever, they wouldn't notice. But they do tune into, man, I remember how my mom would really stop and look at a little, frog that she saw and took a picture. And so it really empowered me to realize that, the best thing that I can do for my kids and my family is to authentically be a whole person and let them see me be a whole person with likes and dislikes and boundaries and limits and mistakes.
All of it. That you have all these habits you're developing, right? That like you get to be a whole person and there's this whole life around you and there's room for both, but maybe not equally, not picture perfect all the time, right?
Yeah. And I think it's so much of it is like, no matter how many kids you've had or what kind of parents you had, the whole thing is just a grand experiment. Like,
yep.
You know what I mean? I think of this a lot as a therapist, like the amount of adult clients that I've had say, my mother never played with me and I always felt so lonely. But then like the next client would come in and be like, my mom always played with me and I always felt so lonely. And then the next client would come in and be like, man, my mom always got up in my grill and was trying to and it was just too much. And I felt suffocated. And I've literally had people say, I wish my mom would have had her own life.
Yeah.
It put so much burden on me to be her whole life. And then the next client will come in and go, I wish my mom was more interested in me because she never cared about me. And then the next one comes in and goes, I wish my mom would have stopped cleaning long enough to see that I was there. And then the next client comes in and goes, I wish my mom would have taken better care of the house because I always felt like stressed out that I didn't have laundry. And you just realize that the whole thing is absolutely sort of a crapshoot. Like you're really not in control as much as we think.
Not at all. Yeah,
it really is just like a blind game.
It is. And it's so good to verbalize that out loud. Like I verbalize this out loud to my kids all the time. Like, today we're going to experiment with this because whatever we were doing before isn't working anymore. It's not making me feel good. I think I'm showing up wrong here. So let's try it again.
Yeah. And I think it also helped me to realize that one of the most powerful parenting advice that I ever heard, and now I can't remember who said it, but they said, your job isn't to be the parent that you needed as a child.
Yep.
Your job is to be the parent that your child needs. Because we take that, okay, my dad did X and that made me feel Y.
Yep.
And so I will never do X to my kids. But like X may or may not be something that is damaging to all children or in all contexts.
Yeah. Yeah, X might be okay depending on the relationship. Like X might be okay with your firstborn, but your secondborn prickles at it. That definitely happens in my house with 3 kids. I am 3 different adults to them. And it's important for me to remember that.
And like, there's some obvious things that would be harmful all the time.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
But a lot of things, recognizing that, okay, in a different context, like if my parent was loving and affectionate, engaged 90% of the time around this one behavior, would that behavior have bothered me? Would that behavior would it have had a negative impact on me? Or is it really more about the constellation of the way my caregiver showed up?
Yeah. Well, so much of us have baggage around cleaning and housework from our growing up experiences, which is where you really shine on Instagram and in your books about taking the idea that care tasks that we need to do, right? Things we have to do to function are morally neutral. Can you tell us more about that? Because I think this is going to really set someone free during this summer vacation of being able to take a deep breath and waste more time with her kids and enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah, so I find that particularly with mothers, there's this idea that, if our houses don't look a certain way, if we're not keeping house a certain way, if we're falling, quote unquote, behind, if we're feeling overwhelmed, that we're failing in our role as a mother.
Yeah.
And recognizing that housework is not motherhood, and think of it this way. If I ever said housework is not fatherhood, you'd be like,
it doesn't even equate. Yeah. No one thinks that.
Right. And no one is saying that. I mean, obviously taking care of our children is a part of that. But when we really look at cleaning, dishes, laundry, those things are morally neutral. And that means that the way you do them, how often you do them, has nothing to do with being a good or bad mother, a failure or a success of a spouse. They're morally neutral. They're just functional things. So they're not moral obligations that measure how good you are.
Yeah.
There are functional tasks that you engage in to take care of yourself and your family. And that really sort of cuts through a lot of perfectionism and a lot of overwhelm, where I just focus, because my kids and we do deserve a functional home.
Right. You deserve a space that allows you to do the things that you want to do.
Yes. And one of my biggest taglines is that I don't exist to serve this house. This house exists to serve me. And so, yes, that's going to take a little work from me, but it's a whole different way of looking at your laundry and your dishes and your tidying and things that, okay, this is a space we live in. It's okay for it to look like we live in it.
Amen at that. Can we just repeat that phrase right there? Right? Our houses, especially during summer when kids maybe are home longer, they're supposed to look like they're going to look like someone lives there.
Yes. And I want my house to feel relaxing, but especially in this stage of life, like recognizing that all stages of motherhood are pretty temporary. And I made a comment the other day, like I just bought this sort of standing shelf that holds baskets in it. And one of the baskets is for dirty laundry. One of the baskets is for diapers. One of the baskets is for like outside stuff, like our bug spray and our whatever. And the other one is for extra clothes, because my kids, they have accidents or they get dirty, they get wet. And it's standing in this like really conspicuous part of our living room by our back door. And it looks like something that would be in like the back room of a Gap. Like it looks like something
it's very
like a
functional.
Workstation. Yeah. And I just made this comment where I was like, listen, I like a pretty thing as much as everyone else. I bought myself flowers at the grocery store. I have throws I love. But more than anything, I need my space to be set up like a workspace, because this is me. I am laboring.
Yep.
I don't want to go up to the second floor every time I need to change my kids' clothes.
No. This reminds me of when another mom told me, like, I could just leave a basket of socks that were all the same by the shoes, that I didn't need to sort them or fold them. Like, all my kids' feet are about the same size. They can all wear the same type of boring sock, and that's okay. It's not a failure.
I have started to cycle out any type of sock that isn't a white sock, and I only buy one type of white sock for me and my kids. And my husband has like fun socks he wears, and I say, that's fine, you can have fun socks, I'm not pairing them.
You're in charge of that.
And we did something similar with we used to keep our shoes in our closets, because that's like where you think they're supposed to be, but like everyone's coming home and taking their shoes off in the living room.
Yep.
So I finally just like got some baskets for people to chuck their shoes into, and like that's where the shoes stay. Like it's okay to break the rules.
Yeah, it's important to break the rules. Like, we pick a game a week and we leave it in the middle of the dining room table because I want to sit down and play a board game with my kids. But if it's hiding in a closet, the space doesn't work for us, because I'm not going to get that trigger to say, hey, brain, you want to play a game with your kids.
Yes. And I know that there are some people that really love a clear counter. I am someone who famously has like every appliance I own out on the countertop because that's what I need. That's what I like. And listen, do I think it looks really pretty to have them clear? Sure. But the reality is, especially at this stage of life with my ADHD, with everything else going on, like the function matters more to me than the aesthetics. And when it comes to counters, I always say, like, there's a difference between a counter that is cluttered because you are doing the things that you like to do versus a counter that's cluttered to a point where you can't do the things you want to do, right? So like having a board game out, I think my like Cricut crafting stuff is taking over the kitchen island, right? Like that is cluttered because I am doing something I like to do and I've been doing a little bit every day. That's different than I really wish I could engage in this hobby, but I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't have a good way to tidy that all of my spaces just have a bunch of clutter on them and I can't use them. That's very different. Very different. And if it allows you to find the space to do the thing that fills you up more because it's there sitting and reminding you, like that is a much better use of the space than a closet. Yeah. And going back to sort of like kids will pay attention more to what we model than what we say. Yeah. Like we can talk a good game all day long about how important it is to, care for our space or make our space functional. But then if we have such perfectionistic standards that what they see is us always engaging in care tasks in a way that we're irritated and frustrated and we're just like, oh, it's such a bummer. I have to do the dishes, right? I'm not saying you have to pretend to be happy about it, but I am saying maybe we can scale it back a little bit, focus on what is most functional. Yes. So that we can experience sort of that like work-life balance even in our home. Yeah. And cleaning up all day may be a good idea in theory, but it might not be what actually works for you. Like my kids have quoted me saying, childhood is supposed to be messy when I see the mess and I groan, or they tell me things like, oh, that's a beautiful mess because I've repeated it over and over and over again to help myself take a deep breath and they're supposed to have paper scraps on the floor if I value them making forts. Going into the kids' playroom and going, wow, it looks like you've had a lot of fun in here. That's another good phrase. And with my kids, we've never been a family where it's like we make them clean up their playroom at the end of the day. Yeah. Because sometimes they have, I one time cleaned up for them at night. Well, I often clean up for them just because they're very little. But one time I cleaned up for them and she came down the next morning and was like, oh, I was still playing with that fort. Yes. And I realized the things we're interested in and the games we're playing, they don't have this neat, I start at 8 a.m. and I'm totally done with it at 5 p.m. No. And so instead of trying to teach them a rote routine of picking up every day at 5 that they don't connect to and they don't feel motivated to do and that isn't functional for them, I've been trying to have them recognize when is this space not functional anymore. Yeah. And so I'll wait until they can't find something they want. I'll wait until one that happens pretty commonly is we have an open concept. And so instead of a dining room, we turned that into the playroom. Oh yeah. That's right for your age and stage. Yeah. Right. Exactly. We don't need a dining room anyways. Nope. But so what I will do is pick up the toys occasionally that are outside of the play area and put them back in the play area because that's it makes me feel better to not have there. You want to not migrate too far outside of the zone. But I'm trying as much as possible to let them get to a place where they recognize this isn't working for me. So one thing that happens pretty commonly is one of them will trip or step on a Lego. Ooh. And I'll go and I'll comfort and I'll use that opportunity to just say, do you want me to help you reset the space? Because it seems like right now, we're getting hurt because there are too many things on the floor. Really leaning into so that they're making that connection. I don't want them to leave my house at 18 and be like, whoo, I never have to do that again because mom wanted us to clean up. I want them to have that connection of it's not about how often I do it or whether I do it perfectly. But when it gets to the point where I can't find all my Paw Patrols or I'm tripping over my Legos, I want to do something about that.
Yeah. If when my friend comes over to play, we can't do what we want. Like all of those things matter. The function matters. So when you were in postpartum depression and trying to find the function, did you have an early on-ramp of what you did to start feeling better, Casey?
The first thing that I did, so I made this connection that, I would wake up in the mornings and, I'm awoken by the screaming of my youngest, right?
Right,
and I'm rushing downstairs and both of my kids immediately want to drink milk. Like one is on regular milk, one's on formula. And I would have to go and find wherever the bottles were in the house, like where they got left in the middle of the night or the night before. Yep. And then I'd have to hand wash them. And all the while everyone is crying, and it was super stressful to me. And what would happen was I'd get my kids to bed and I would just collapse. And I'd think, I don't want to do anything else. I would look at the house kind of be destroyed and go, I don't have it in me, because I still had this black and white, clean it all or clean nothing.
Yes, because that's how it's sold and taught to us, kind of. Like, as a kid, love you, Mom and Dad. I know you listen to this podcast, but it was definitely black and white thinking. Like, the job is done or it's not. And then,
And everything worth doing is worth doing,
Right. You clean your plate when you eat your dinner and all the completionist sort of things.
Yes. And so the first thing I did was finally recognize, like, okay, if I just take 5 minutes, literally set a timer for 5 minutes and put the dishes into the dishwasher, I will have these clean bottles first thing in the morning. And that was sort of the first aha moment, was if I just do this one thing, I can leave the rest of it looking like a disaster. But if I did this one thing, I will have like a better quality of life in the morning. I'll be setting myself up for success. But the biggest aha moment was there were some evenings where I couldn't even manage to do that. Like I would stare at those dishes and be like, I just can't. And one day I took the bottles, like just the bottles that I would need in the morning. And I opened up my clean dishwasher and I took like 2 coffee cups out, and then I shoved those dirty dishes back into that clean dishwasher and shut it and ran it again. And I was like, I looked around, like you're like waiting for the police to come in and arrest you because you've like done something very against the rules. And I just realized, like, you know what? It's okay. Like,
there's no laundry or dishwasher police. Isn't that amazing?
Right. So, realizing that on the nights that I could, I would unload and reload the dishwasher. And on the nights when I couldn't, I could still just shove those bottles into there and have clean bottles. That's where I started. That is,
does it surprise you that that's what you needed?
I mean,
like now, like looking back on it, like it seems so simple, but like when you're in that tight spot, like that made all the difference to you.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, and I must have done that for 5 months, maybe. Like that was the only thing I did. And then 5 months later, it had become such a ritual that I looked around and I went, one of the reasons why there's a lot of trash that piles up on the countertop is because when the trash gets full, I don't have even an extra second to like tie it up, take it out, walk it all the way outside to where I've got small kids inside.
Exactly.
And so I'm just leaving it, and then I can't put any more trash. So then it's piling up on top. And so I started realizing that if I would take the trash out every night after loading the dishwasher, that would stop happening. And then the real key was like there would maybe be a random day where the trash would be half full.
Oh.
But recognizing that, you would think, I don't have to take it out yet. But recognizing that like I'm not doing very well with like taking it out when it gets full, because I will inevitably be in the middle of doing something else with the kids. Mm-hmm. So I started taking the trash out every single night at 7:30, even if it wasn't quite full, because it's not about whether it's full and needs to go out. It's about how much empty trash can am I going to need tomorrow?
Yes.
I'm going to need
a fully empty
trash can tomorrow.
Yeah,
exactly.
Tomorrow that was the dishwasher trick, was the thing that started saving me early on during my husband's deployments. That if no matter how many things were in there, if I could just run the dishwasher, because my girls are 18 months apart. So the first deployment he went on, I had an almost 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. So total chaos, right? And far away, 12 hours away from family. So if I could just get the dishwasher done every day in the morning, just like you, then I could wake up and feed someone in the morning without having to hand wash something, because that was the worst.
Yes.
So much stress.
And I think that all or nothing, once we get away from that, like if it's morally neutral, and then we have to start looking at how am I talking to myself about these tasks?
Yep. Yeah.
Right? Like, am I looking at the pile of dishes and going, gosh, I'm so lazy. I'm really failing.
Yeah.
And if that's how I'm talking to myself, that has a huge impact on my mental health, on my energy levels, on my motivation, and really asking myself, would I talk to a friend that way? Mm-hmm. Would I go over to a friend's house who's postpartum, who is, doing her best, and look at her dishes and go, wow, you're so lazy? I
sure hope not.
No,
right?
Yet I would talk to myself that way.
Absolutely.
And the thing is that like dishes don't have meaning; they're just dishes.
Yeah.
So while you can look at those dishes in the sink and think, "Wow, I'm not keeping up," but like there are dishes in your sink, that also means that you fed your family for the past however many days.
And this is my favorite reframe of that, is seeing why they're there and giving yourself credit for all the things that you are doing to stay alive, that instead of seeing it negative.
And I have to tell you this story because it really opened my eyes. When I was writing the book, I was writing about the first TikTok that I ever posted.
Yeah.
Where, I was very newly postpartum, and I was taking shots of all the stuff in my house that wasn't done, empty enchilada pan, a bunch of dishes in the sink. And I was sort of, there's this audio that was talking about these are the things that are not going to get done today.
Yep.
And, someone commented on it and they just said lazy. Like that was their comment. And I remember that stage feeling so overwhelmed, feeling as though I wasn't doing enough, feeling as though, I wasn't keeping up, and remember really thinking how are other parents doing this? Yeah. And when the book released, this edition of the book 2 years later, I went back and found that TikTok so that I could repost it. And I noticed something about it. When there's this shot of my sink, where I noticed that my food processor was in the sink. Huh. And the thought that I had 2 years later, right? Yeah. So the thoughts that I was having at the time, looking at the dishes in the sink, was, I'm not keeping up. Yeah. 2 years later, my first thought was, what the heck was I food processing at 6 weeks postpartum?
What sort of crazy meal were you trying to make?
Yes.
That was way too complicated.
And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at it with these new eyes, and I'm almost giving myself credit. Wait a second. I made something from scratch for my family at that stage? Yes. First of all, what was I thinking? But also, go you.
Absolutely. That is my biggest tip. I try to tell moms that all the time. At the end of the day, find the one good thing that you can give yourself credit for. If it's making a dinner or feeding food off of paper plates and the paper plates get into the trash can, paper plates save me during the deployment. So I love that you say, use the paper plates.
Yes, use the paper plates. And we're often looking back at ourselves and with much kinder eyes than what we had at the time. And my thing is let's just practice bringing those kinder eyes more into the present.
Yeah. Yeah, that self-compassion for trying your best in the moment.
And I'm currently sort of experimenting with our dishes, because dishes is kind of my bugaboo, right? That's the thing that really stresses me out. And going back to that, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We use paper plates as well, but what I've started doing is I took out like the rules say, you stack all of your dishes together, you stack all of your plates together, in your cabinets. And I really started thinking about how many dishes does my family need in a day? Yep. And what is the amount of dishes that doesn't feel overwhelming at the end of the day? And so realizing okay, if I had 2 water cups for my kids, 2 milk cups, 6 little plastic plates, and then I put, 2 or 3 plates for myself. And obviously there are going to be some days you use more and some days you use less. But what I've started doing is, on the days where we end up needing more dishes than this little daily allowance I put aside, or sometimes maybe I have a hard night and I don't do the dishes at all, that's when I start using my paper plates.
Bravo.
And that's really working for me because I have this, I'm not going all or nothing, but I'm recognizing what my limits are.
Yeah.
So this is the amount of dishes that we usually use. And these are the amount of dishes that I can reasonably stay kind of on top of and not feel overwhelmed. And if I need something more than this, it's okay for me to start using the paper plates. And then whenever I reset the dishes, I go back to my little dish, inventory. And in that way, I feel good about what I'm doing. I'm respecting my limits and I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah. And I find we've moved a lot over the years. And so what that reminds me of, Casey, is when we're in this temporary living and we're in a hotel, right? Like a kitchenette sort of thing. There's just enough dishes for that day in there, right? It's not overstocked. And your stress level is so much lower when it's just, that's what it is. Like,
yep.
When my kids can't grab 500 cups, there's less cups to wash.
I know. I ordered these two they're made of silicone.
Yeah.
And they're little short cups, and that's from like Silipint, I think. But like they feel really like fun to touch and to hold, and they have like that tactile sensation, and they're different than all the other cups in the house. And it's amazing how being like, these are your cups, buddies. Like, this is it. Like it's no big deal actually for me to hand wash them quickly in between meals. When what I used to do is, okay, these are dirty, throw them in the sink, get two more out. These are dirty now, get two more out. And then I had a bunch of cups. And so there are just simple things like that we can do that will really change the game in terms of feeling like we can stay on top of functioning.
Absolutely. Another thing that I'll throw it out there as a tip, that we gave everyone color-coded plates one deployment.
Yes, it's so genius because even going with, I noticed that cleaning my kids' plates wasn't as overwhelming as cleaning mine. And I realized that having heavy glass dishes.
Yes.
Like it did something to feeling like the literal burden of it. And I ended up getting a picnic basket for Christmas from my dad, and it came with like 4 little melamine plates.
Yes, they're so much easier to wash for some reason.
For some reason, they just don't feel the same.
Yeah, they're lighter, they're easier to hold. You're not worried about dropping them. Like I can be interrupted and it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's amazing. So care tasks are morally neutral, and we need to get to a spot and figure out what it takes for us to function, that our house is supposed to function for us, not us for the house.
Yeah. And that there really aren't any rules. Like the function of laundry is to have clean clothes. So like you can do that any way that has clean clothes at the end.
Yeah. The number of moms that are ashamed to say that all their clean clothes just goes into a basket is really high. Like we whisper it to each other like, oh, I don't fold that. Like I shove all my sheets into the pillowcase that goes with the sheet, and I don't fold any of it. But they're together, but they just all get shoved inside of a pillowcase, the backup sheets.
And then even if there's like functional issues, so they'll be like, and I don't like it because like I have to dig through the whole pile to find what I need. When we think there are rules, we keep trying to quote unquote fix it by doing the right things. Like I need to fold it and put it away, instead of realizing, well, if the issue is that you can't find it, what if you just had more clean baskets and you were putting the clean shirts into this basket and the clean shorts into this basket and the clean socks into this basket? Yeah. You're still not folding it, but now you can find it easier. And if that's the block, like the idea of folding it and putting away is kind of what's like bottlenecking the process. Let's see if we can go around that instead of trying to shove it through the bottleneck.
Yeah. And I remember going off to college, one of my older cousins pulled me aside and she's like, okay, when laundry gets overwhelming because you're doing laundry for the first time by yourself and using bad dryers, she's like, just buy more underwear. Like you don't have to worry about all the clothes. Just buy more underwear. Yes. Like we can do simple things like that.
One funny thing that's been happening to me this week, we've actually, since my husband is in trial, we've actually been sending our laundry out.
What a nice thing.
Yes, to get it washed and folded. But then sometimes in the middle of the week, I would have something where I was like, okay, like they've been swimming or there's an accident. I'm like, I don't want to let this just like sit wet in the laundry basket until Saturday. So then I started doing like small little loads during the week. And the reason why I had ever resisted that is because for me, I've got ADHD, and the idea of like that multi-step process of like wash, transfer to the dryer, take it out, fold. So there's always like something in my dryer. So what I've been doing this week, Christy, I've been throwing the small load, washing it. And then when I walk by it and I see it, I open the top of it. I don't even take it. I just open the top for two reasons. One, it will visually cue me the next time I walk to remember. And number two, getting air into it buys me a little bit of time before it starts to mold, to mold and mildew, right? Because the air is circulating. So then I walk through, and what was happening was I was not putting it into the dryer because there was already stuff in the dryer. And I didn't have the capacity to take it out and put it away. Then I realized because I'm doing these small little loads, I could just put it in there with, it's like the dishwasher all over
You could throw it in.
Take it. Yes. And I put it in there with the stuff that's already dry, clean the lint, do it again. And I can do that 3 or 4 times before I have to take the whole load out of the dryer and deal with it.
Isn't it amazing when you give yourself permission, like that there's no washer and dryer police, there's no laundry police, there's no dishwasher police. Like if the space is clean, and not even clean, just functional, like, there's we've really weaponized housework against ourselves.
Yes. And what's so funny is like some of us will go to work and we will have the most creative, ingenious ways of making our work processes more effective, more comfortable, more convenient. And then we come home and fold toddler underwear. Like it's okay to use the same type of brilliance and creativity that you do use or used to use at a workplace.
Yes.
With the processes in your home.
Absolutely. And please use that creativity. Please give yourself that permission, because then you can take a deep breath and find a moment of rest and
do the things that bring you joy in your home. Like when I stopped waiting for my whole house to be clean before I put up Christmas decorations, right? When I started buying the little cheap flowers at the grocery store, even though I knew my whole island was so cluttered that I was only going to see the top of them sticking out, right? When I started allowing myself to do the fun things, to do the things that brought me joy, the finishing touches before everything was perfect, that made a huge difference. So now I'm focusing on get it to functioning. And then like, what makes me happy about the space? Because if you have to get it perfect, you never get to the place where you can do the fun stuff. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. You have to be able to have the fun stuff in order to do like the next level hard. Yeah. I remember like I like to add sprinkles to all the food that we add sometimes, right? Like when we're trying new foods, adding sprinklers to my toddler's food is like one of my key core memories, because I knew I could get them to eat it if it had rainbow sprinkles on it. Mm-hmm. We need more rainbow sprinkles in our day to just try the thing.
And I've been like trying to also ritualize as much as possible. Like I used to look at my mom and she decorates for Christmas and it's this big ordeal and it's so beautiful, but I tend to get really overwhelmed by, putting it up or taking it down, or I don't even know where to start. And so I created this system for myself. I have these big tubs. Mm-hmm. So I picked like the 4 seasons or holidays I wanted to do. And I just picked like objects. So like I have, a throw that matches like the season.
Yeah.
And sometimes like a pillow that'll go with it, like a throw and a pillow.
Yep.
And then I have a wreath, and I'm talking like I get like the cheap wreaths from Michael's, right? Mm-hmm. And some little fake flowers outside. And then I have something that goes onto the windows. And so those are like my 3 categories.
That's
and
awesome.
I spent a couple of years, like I'd wait till the holiday passed and then I'd go buy the cheap stuff.
Yep. The day after Thanksgiving is the best day to buy the...
Yes. And I simplified it where it's like, okay, it's, for springtime, I have these really beautiful quilt throws. I put my sunflower wreath up, and then my kids and I make like ladybugs or butterflies.
Yeah, some sort of art project together. Yes. Yeah.
And then like the next season comes and it's like, okay, we take that stuff down and we get out like the burnt orange throw for Halloween, and we put our Halloween wreath out and we do pumpkins.
Yep.
And so, but breaking it down into this like very almost like ritualized, like every season has 3 things.
I love it.
Like you can make things really simple like that and they still bring you joy. And it is functional to have this sort of ritual where we're turning over the seasons. I recently did that for my post-Christmas winter.
Yeah.
Because I get a little depressed when I have to take my Christmas decorations down.
Winter can be really long without a Christmas tree up anymore.
And I realized that if I was taking Christmas down, it was depressing. But if I was taking Christmas down and then putting up my sort of winter decorations, it felt less like an ending and more like this sort of hopeful transition to the new year. And so these are the kind of things that like we often don't allow ourselves to get to or explore because the laundry's still unfolded.
Yeah. This is why we leave the game out on the dining room table, because I just want that gentle skill building for myself, that this is the memory that I want to have when I'm 80. I don't want to have the memory of being stressed out about laundry. I want to have the memory of tracing hands with kids or playing with Play-Doh or pumpkins in the window, right? Like those people over that false productivity of things that don't really matter.
And I find that when I'm having trouble engaging with my kiddos and I feel kind of burnt out and like I'm just wanting to check out all the time, what typically happens is I feel guilty about that. Yep. And so I try to force myself to be more present.
Yep.
And what I've realized is that the issue when I'm feeling burnt out is not that I'm not doing enough. It's actually that I'm doing too much.
Yeah.
And so if I take a step back and go, what can I let go of? What can I minimize? Sometimes that means saying no more often to my kids.
Yep.
Sometimes that means, sending that laundry out for a few weeks or using paper plates for a bit. If I'm finding myself lacking in the capacity to be the parent I want to be, capacity is finite. I can't just push myself to show up more. I have to go find that capacity somewhere else and reclaim it from something else that I'm using it for that isn't as high of a priority for me. So I actually need to figure out how to do less. And I think sometimes the easiest way to find that is find where in my home can I do a little less and just focus on what's functional so that I have more capacity to make those handprints, right? To engage in discipline with patience, to do the fun things.
Yep. Yeah. Or to enjoy your spouse when you're tired at 7:30 p.m. once the kids are in bed, if he happens to be home. So all of those things matter. So how do you take care of yourself? Every episode here ends with a self-care task and a family fun idea. How are you taking care of yourself, Casey? Do you have a self-care idea?
Well, I do. So I do a couple of small things around my home. Actually, a lot of the decoration stuff is because I really, really love it.
Yeah,
really
your face is lighting up as you talk about this.
And I used to, what I've started doing is buying the grocery store flowers.
Yeah.
When I go, and they're often on clearance, like they're often, affordable in the budget, and just buying myself fresh flowers and putting them in a vase in the middle of it just makes me so happy to wake up and look at it. And then the other thing is that I have been going to therapy.
Yes.
I've been going a couple times a month, and there have been times where it feels a little it's kind of indulgent, like I'm not in some huge crisis.
Yeah.
But really believing that I am worth the work even when I'm not in crisis. Not just thinking that medication and therapy are for when I'm again in crisis, but allowing myself to say no, this is really enhancing my quality of life to have these couple of times a month to go and do this. And so taking medication, going to therapy, and, it was a big deal to make the decision to sort of officially be a work from home mom as opposed to a stay at home mom. And I did feel kind of guilty, but after talking to some friends and some family, and after, hiring the nanny during the day and working regular work hours, what I found was I have so much more ability to be present with my kids.
Yeah.
I'm rediscovering an identity outside of just parenthood.
Yep.
And so for me, working it on this kind of passion project on this platform, so it is self-care.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's nice that it's self-care that funds itself, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not doing it because, it's contributing money. I'm doing it because it makes me a happier person. And I think that makes me a better member of my family.
I love that because, as I imagine, as you work on this and as you show up vulnerably to yourself, my favorite image of self-care isn't the cup that we talk about having a full cup, right? And then you pour it out. But my favorite image of self-care is when you have that full cup and there's lots of little cups around it and you're just continuously pouring into yourself. So you're giving from all that overflow. And that's what it sounds like you found by saying yes to becoming a work from home mom, that you're pouring into yourself.
That metaphor that you just used is that I think that when we think of the metaphor of the full cup, it's like you need to fill your cup so that you can fill others. And we picture ourselves like tipping over.
That's true
and
too.
Outpouring.
Yeah.
But like the visual that you give is like, if I'm standing straight.
Yep. You're in your space.
Allowing it to overflow. Then those little cups around me are going to get filled by my overflow. And I don't have to pour myself out.
Yep.
I have to pour into myself and stand up straight and have an identity and have, a quality of life. And then from that overflow, everybody else gets filled as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to live from the excess of loving myself so well that I can love everyone and, impact my world better because I love myself.
And the one little note that I want to put on that, because I know there are probably listeners that are thinking, well, yeah, if I had time to afford therapy and afford send my laundry out and afford do all these things, I don't have the time or money to do that. And I wanted to say that sometimes, it's not necessarily about, okay, where is the time and money? But like one example that I often give, was talking to someone who said like, I work these many jobs. I don't have extra time. I'm the only caregiver.
Right.
So what we talked about was, okay, but what would it look like to make Friday nights the night where you could budget to order pizza?
Yep.
Even if it was a DiGiorno pizza.
Yep.
You did paper plates, so there are no dishes. You let the kids watch a movie and fall asleep wherever they wanted to go, right?
Yep.
And like you didn't, and so in this way, you're giving up the dishes, you're giving up the nighttime battle and the laying with the whatever, right? So you're carving out a night where you just kind of get to be. Maybe you go do something while they're doing but even if you didn't, you're still carving out a night that is taking some burden off of you.
Yes. And
you're kind of getting more of that capacity, right? So like that's one way to sort of think about.
Yes.
Even if it's one night a week.
One night a week. And I love it on Fridays. We do this. I started it when my kids were super little. They would put their PJs on before we ate pizza. They would eat. They would fall asleep in front of the TV. And I call it that Friday night I quit. Like I quit every Friday night and we get pizza, and it used to be Pizza Picnic Movie Friday, right? Some alliteration because I'm a teacher, so I had to throw it in there. But yeah, that ability to not have to do it. Like I knew every Friday, they're all going to fall asleep in the living room floor and it didn't matter, or on the couch, and I could put towels underneath them if they're in that season of needing extra just in case, right? But I got to quit every Friday and it feels so good. I still quit every Friday.
Yeah.
So how are you enjoying yourself as a family? What are some family fun that you're having?
So I actually took my kids to the beach by myself for the first time. And it was a big deal because I have a lot of child safety anxiety, and particularly around water and drowning.
Yep.
And so, but I really wanted to take my kids to the beach, and my husband had to work he's been in trial. And I called some friends to see if anyone and none of my friends were available. And I was like, okay, am I going to do it? And I did. And I'm so proud of myself because I took my kiddos, I put them both in life jackets, and we went to the beach all day. And we had so much fun. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And it was relaxing. I didn't think I could relax at an outing like that, but we brought our little tent. They had their, little life jackets on. We found a small beach, man, and we just had so much fun. And now we're going to go again this week. And I live pretty close to a beach, but I just didn't ever take them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just was really meaningful to me to kind of push myself to get over the anxiety, not get over the anxiety, but to do it even though I was scared.
Yeah.
And I was scared. What if one of my kids is autistic? What if they run? What if they don't pay attention? What if they run in 2 different directions? And, my husband was so sweet. He said, you can always just come home.
Yeah.
Right? There's no harm in trying. If it feels too much, if it feels too overwhelming, you can just come home.
Yep.
And, but I didn't. We were there for 6 hours.
That's amazing. I'm so proud for you, Casey. That's amazing. Thanks. Do they have matching life jackets?
They don't have matching life jackets, but they do have matching swimsuits. It's very cute.
Very fun. So that was one of my tricks at that age was, right, that the girls had to wear matching things so I could, if one ran, I knew exactly what to look for the other one. It wasn't about being cute. It was more all about function of like, okay, everyone's wearing purple today. I can scan the crowd for purple.
I learned that when I took my kid to a huge park one time and she was wearing bright pink and I was like, this is easy. I can see you wherever you are.
Yeah, I was so excited when I convinced my son that he loved orange. Like he just wore orange enough that he thought orange was his favorite color. And I was like, yes, this works. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where you are on TikTok, that is your main platform online, but you also have a website and a book. Where should people find you?
So my website is a great sort of place to go that you can jump off to all the other things. My website is strugglecare.com. From there, you can find out what all retailers are carrying my book, which is How to Keep House While Drowning. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble.
And it's great as an audiobook. You give your audiobook is very functional. And if you need to speed run it, she tells you how to speed run it and which chapters to skip.
And then on TikTok, I'm at Domestic Blisters. And then on Facebook and Instagram, I'm at Struggle Care.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Casey. It was a delight to talk to you today.
Thank you.
And in case no one's told you today, you are exactly the right mom for your kids. I am so glad you're here. Motherhood is way too serious to be serious all the time. So I hope you laugh and you smile and you enjoy this one wild, crazy life you have. I'm so glad you're here on Earth. Have a great day.